This story happened more than 10 years ago when I was still a student. It has a few graphic details of animal harm and graphic violence, so discretion is advised. A bit of a backstory. As with most students, I was always broke and had a few ventures apart from my part-time job to bring me extra money. One of them was house and pet sitting. I have always had a love for animals, so when this couple contacted me to ask to house sit for them for the last few days before they return from their overseas trip, as the last sitter has bailed on them and their 6-month-old golden retriever puppy would be alone, I jumped at the opportunity. The fact that they promised to pay me the full 2-week fee for staying there less than a week made it just more appealing. Little did I know how bad it would turn out. I got the details, got the keys from the agent, and headed over to the house as it was already 5 p.m. and almost dark as it was early spring. I got to the house, which was a really nice place, but it bordered a not-so-good area that was and still is prone to crime. House break-ins, robberies, and many more. It didn't bother me much, 'cause, nothing will happen to me. I know, young and naive. The first 4 nights went without a hitch, watching movies, jacuzzi, and just generally enjoying myself. The owners would have returned on the 5th day, fairly late at night, and I went over to check on the dog. I got a call from them about 10 p.m. saying their flight got delayed and that they were going to stay in a hotel and do the 3.5-hour drive back the following morning, and they asked if I could sleep there again that night, which was fine. I was already there and had my overnight bag still in my car. I called my dad to let him know of the plans, as I was still staying with my parents, and he specifically asked what the address was. I normally did not give them the details like that, because I was old enough to look after myself. I still believe to this day that doing that probably saved my life. I eventually got to bed about 1 a.m., and it felt like I have only slept 5 minutes when I was awoken to a window breaking, and I could hear movement and what sounded like footsteps running down the hallway. The first thing I did was grab my phone and just hit redial. Well, thanks to my old Motorola phone, redialing was as simple as pressing one button, as my dad was the last number that I had called, and I was hoping that he wakes up from the call. I then dropped the phone in between the headboard and the mattress in case my dad picks up so that he can hear what's going on, and I had barely done that when the first guy stormed through the bedroom door. I could see his silhouette, and he had a knife in his hand. When he saw me, he raised it and came at me. Now, one thing to those that is unfamiliar with South Africa and the crime is that robberies and household invasions usually are very brutal and violent. People get murdered or tortured if they, in the slightest, retaliate or not cooperate with the robbers. But out of instinct, I raised my legs back when he came at me, and when he came within reach, I kicked both legs out as hard as I can. Now, I'm not a small guy. I'm 6'3", and at that stage, I weighed about 100 kilograms, or 220 pounds, and I was fit and strong. My time not spent at the university or work was at the gym, and I could do an easy 250-pound bench, 350-pound squat. When I kicked and made contact with a guy, he completely lifted off the ground and shot into the wall. Luckily, the knife shot out of his hand as well. Before he got the chance to get up, I was on top of him, driving my right knee into his face and in return, his head into the wall. I knew that my life depended on it, so I put in some extra force. The guy dropped like a sack of potatoes, but before I could get up, I heard the sound of a pistol cocked and I froze. It felt like all the blood drained from my body and I became just numb. I remember the only thing that went through my head was that if he shot me, that I would rather be dead than be disabled or dependent on other people that will have to take care of me. He stood like that with a pistol against my head for what felt like hours, but was probably less than 10 seconds. I didn't move, and he eventually said in very broken English to get on the bed and face down. I panicked, but thought if he wanted to shoot me, that he already would have done so. So I did as he said. He threw a blanket over me, and I turned into a fetal position with my back against the wall, just so if they wanted to stab me, that I had my legs and arms in front to protect my body. Now, by that time, I had forgotten that I had called my dad, and the guy that I had kneed is still down. I heard a third guy come into the room, and I could hear what sounded like Portuguese to me. I could not understand what they said, but I recognized it as we used to go to Mozambique on holiday a lot, and that is the main language spoken there. The one guy tried to get the guy that I put down off the ground, while the other started to ransack the house, shoving valuables into a big bag. It was about at this time that I heard tires screeching and a car approaching at what sounded like match 1. The car skidded to a halt right in front of the gate, and I heard someone scream. It was my dad. The 3 inside the house panicked and ran out the back door and tried to jump the fence. My dad opened fire, shooting in their general direction. Now, I know my dad missed them on purpose, because if he wanted to hit them, he would, as he is not one of, but the best shot that I know. And I'm not just saying that because he's my dad. He's an ex-Army, Special Forces, represented SA in the Clay Pigeon World Championships a couple of years ago, has various regional pistol and rifle championship titles, and is a gunsmith by occupation. I have seen him hit golf balls at 50 meters with his pistol. Politics and the racial situation in the country would have had him in big trouble had he had hit one of them. I grabbed the house keys and pressed the gate remote, and my dad called the police while he came in. I met him at the front door, and we walked out to the car to wait there for the police. It took them over an hour to get there, some excuse of no vehicle available. By that time, I had calmed down and started to look for the dog. I could not find her anywhere, and I grabbed a flashlight from my dad and started scanning the surrounding yard. And as I got to the corner, I could see her laying on the ground, and I got to her and saw she was dead. Later autopsies revealed she was poisoned, and the police found pieces of meat laced with poison near the fence. Poisoning is pretty standard practice in my country for dealing with dogs at a house or area that is targeted for a break-in or robbery. And I was fuming and so sad. The police was also pretty useless and had a don't give a shit attitude and barely took our statements. By that time, it was starting to get light, and I retrieved my bag, phone, and locked the house as good as I can without touching anything, and drove home behind my dad. Only when I got home, I got the story from my dad's side. He said he answered my call, only to hear the shouting and what sounded like fighting going on, and when I did not respond, he flew out the house and raced over. Luckily, he asked me for the address the previous night, and he knows the area well to know exactly which house it is. Now, my dad got there pretty quickly, and he said he stayed on the line the whole time, only hanging up when he stopped at the gate. My parents' house is about 10 kilometers or 6 miles from there through a residential area, and it's normally about a 20-minute drive. The call duration was 7 minutes and 30 seconds. I met the detective there later that day, gave my statement, they took my fingerprints, and etc., and the owners got back about the same time. The rest of the day was a blur as I came down from the shock and adrenaline. Now that is not where the story ends. About 7 or 8 months later, I got a call from the detective telling me they caught the guys and I must come to take a lineup to point them out. I specifically told her that I did not see any of their faces as it was dark, and after the guy held the gun against my head, I was under the blanket and did not see anything. She assured me that they caught them on fingerprints and will show them to me beforehand, which might not be the ethically correct way to do it, but they wanted to have as much evidence as possible against them. You will understand why in a minute. I got to the police station, and unlike you see in the movies, there is no one-way glass or a separate room. They bring the 3 guys into the room and make them stand against the wall. The one which I was later told was the leader, which was the one that I had need, look at me with so much hate as I had never seen in my life. He had the eyes of someone that would slit your throat and not blink an eye. His name was Joseph Dragon Sambo. He pulled his hand up to his neck and made the slit my throat gesture. You know which one I mean. We left the room and the detective gave me a copy of his rap sheet. Amongst others, 4 counts of murder, I think 8 to 9 for attempted murder, multiple assault, aggravated assault, over 100 of housebreak and robbery, and rape. I was shocked. The detective told me that had I not taken him out first and fast that night, I would have definitely not gotten away so lightly. Now, this is also not where the story ends. 3 days later, I get another call from the detective saying that I should be careful as he had escaped from custody and they have not caught him yet. I was not worried too much as the robbery wasn't at my house and I had changed cars, so he probably could not find me. Also, I got my firearm license and carried my pistol on me 24/7. I did not hear anything after that until about 2 years later, when I saw the detective in the grocery shop. We started talking about the case, and she told me that he was killed during a home invasion. He broke into the wrong house, and the owner was waiting for him, pistol in hand, shot him 1 in the stomach and 1 in the neck. And thanks to the slow response time of emergency services and police, he bled out on the guy's living room floor, ridding society of a piece of human garbage. I want to add a bit of info to all of this. All 3 that were caught were Mozambican nationals, undocumented, and no fingerprints or ID in the system, essentially illegal immigrants. And it is of opinion in South Africa that more than 70% of all violent crimes is done by illegal immigrants, mainly Mozambican, Zimbabwean, and Nigerian descent. It makes it fairly easy, cause none of those countries have extradition to South Africa, so if it gets too hot, they just flee back over the border and nothing can be done to them. This whole ordeal has made me more vigilant, heightened my situational awareness, and made me a little paranoid to double and triple check all doors and locks at night. Also, thanks to my heightened situational awareness, has allowed me to remove myself from a few potential dangerous situations in the years after the incident. But it has also robbed me of my peace of mind, and I have since immigrated to a safer country, but I still sometimes wake up at night if I hear a noise. So to keep up with tradition, Joseph, we will never meet again as you have passed, but to this cronies, or anyone that wants to try something similar, please do not pay me a visit. I will arrange your swiftly departure and reunion with Joseph in hell. And to Joseph, I hope you died in agony for poisoning Daisy. This is my first post. I just found this subreddit and I made an account so I could contribute. My sister and I are sort of magnets for weird shit happening, so I might post a couple other stories in the future. This happened when I was about 12 years old in Kansas. I was sitting in my bedroom playing Halo. My parents were both out running errands, and my sister was at work. So I was home alone with my two dogs, a little terrier and a Bichon Frise. Not exactly the attack dog breeds, more likely early warning systems at best. I had been home alone before, and it really was not a big deal. We lived in a pretty safe part of town that had never had any problems, other than one time where some people sprayed KKK graffiti on some public park equipment. Anyway, I was kicking back in my chair, Doritos in one hand and a controller in the other. Full gamer mode. When I heard the very distinct sound of my door open and close, like someone had just come in. The room I was in faced in such a way where I could not see the front door, and my dogs got up and ran into the living room, and so I assumed my parents were home. I shouted for my mom to confirm this. I'm a bit paranoid due to the aforementioned being a weird shit magnet, and I heard no response. My dogs also were not barking like they normally do when someone gets home, and I thought that this was kind of weird. So I paused my game and walked out into the living room. Nothing. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I had heard someone come in, clear as day, and I was not wearing headphones. I had the TV turned down and was listening to music, so I knew it couldn't have been the game. I immediately went to my parents' closet and grabbed our shotgun, like a good Midwest boy tends to do. The only problem with that was that I didn't know where my dad kept the shells. So my plan was to fake it and hope they didn't have a gun of their own. I know, stupid plan, but I wasn't the brightest kid. At this point, doubt started to kick in. Had I actually heard the door? Was it the game? But then I thought, why would the dogs jump up like that if it was? I walked back into my living room, unloaded shotgun pointing in front of me. I tried to call my dad, he didn't pick up. I tried to call my mom, and she didn't pick up too. I tried to call two of my best friends, and they didn't pick up. My 12-year-old mind immediately jumped to, holy fuck, they're all dead. And so for the first time in my life, I had to call 911. The operator picked up and I explained the situation with tears in my eyes from fear. She told me to stay calm and that the police were on their way. The difficult part about staying calm was that there was a hallway by my front door. I knew in my heart of hearts that there was someone in that hallway about to jump out and really fuck my day up. My two dogs were right by me, also staring towards the hallway, and this did not help my fear. I stood there rooted to the spot for what felt like an hour, but was actually only a few minutes. The operator's voice in my ear telling me to stay calm, and thankfully, my parents opened the front door. "What the fuck are you doing?" I explained to my father the situation we were currently in, and he grabs his pistol from the front room. I didn't know that was there, so thanks, Dad, and we go hunting. I always thought it would be cool to go around clearing rooms and shit, like a SWAT team, but fuck if I wasn't about to shit myself every time we opened a bedroom. We didn't find anything, and the police arrived shortly after and told us that this had been happening over the past few weeks. People wait until homeowners leave, check the door, and if it's unlocked, they go in and take valuables. They said whoever it was probably left when they heard that someone was home, which never quite sat right with me because I only heard the door open and close once. Ever since this happened, I have triple checked every door and window lock whenever I am home alone. And to whoever walked into my house that day, and I never saw you, and I really hope I never do. As a fun little postscript to this story, I told it to one of my friends, and he goes, "You only heard the door once?" You probably heard them leaving, not entering then. They were already in the house. And that was not comforting. This took place a few decades ago. It was a normal evening that turned into a fairly normal night. I got home, kicked my shoes off, my girlfriend got home, we had dinner, watched some TV, got a bit handsy while watching TV, let the dog out, and then pretty much raced into our bedroom to work off some of that energy that had built up. When we were done, we went to sleep. I was woken up at 4 a.m. by a loud bang outside. I didn't know where the bang came from or what it sounded like. I just know I definitely heard something, and my girlfriend did too. A second bang came from our back garden a few minutes later. This time, it sounded like something had just hit our fence. I thought it was just a fox or something, but decided to put on my clothes and boots to go make sure anyway. I opened my bedroom door and was hit with a cold blast. It was the end of March, so it wasn't freezing, but it was definitely colder in the hallway than it was in my room. That was weird. I went down the stairs and immediately saw why. My back door was wide open. That's weird, I thought. I remembered that I'd closed the door when I went upstairs, but maybe I hadn't? I went outside and looked around, nothing out of the ordinary, and I went back inside and did a sweep of my house with a knife in my hand. Nothing. I closed and I locked the door. My dog was sat in her bed in the kitchen, so I gave her a few pets while I had a glass of water, and I went back to bed. I was woken up again, but this time by the sound of my dog barking and growling and screaming. I flipped the covers off myself and raced downstairs in my pajamas. I turned the corner and burst into my kitchen so hard that, as I later found out, I ruined my hinges. There was a man crouched over my dog, strangling her. I remember yelling, "What the fuck?" and ran at this man as fast as I could. He couldn't even turn around by the time that I had grabbed him by the hair, pulled him off my dog, and slammed his head into my refrigerator and let him flop to the ground. I yelled up to my girlfriend to call the fucking police, and I got a closer look at him while he pulled himself off the floor. His hair was bedraggled, greasy, and was grown to cover his eyes, and he was dressed in a wholly black t-shirt and pants with no shoes, and he fucking reeked of piss. My poor dog was cowering behind me. The man was stood back up now and was easily 6 foot and really skinny, almost emaciated. When I slammed his head into my refrigerator, I had heard a crack, which, after seeing just how fucking twig-like this guy was, I'm pretty sure that was his skull cracking. He was so fucking bony. His movements looked unnatural, and from what I could see of his face, He had protruding cheekbones and had no meat at all to cover any of his facial structure. I got ready to punch him in the face and hopefully knock him back down, but before I could, he started screaming. Just this loud, unnatural shrill that still fills me with fear when I think about it to this day. It threw me off guard, and he made a beeline for the kitchen door, and I chased him. What if he was going for my girlfriend? Once he made it out, he ran at my front door, flung it open, and booked it down the street, still shrieking. I told the police everything, and they got some sketches done. All that ever came of that, though. He's still out there, and my dog is fine. I took her to get a checkup the next day to make sure nothing in her neck was damaged, and she was all good. But I shit myself whenever something goes bump in the night. Hi everybody, it's your creepy sister here. Thank you so much for listening and watching the video. I really do hope that you enjoyed it. Anyway, if you want to send a story for me to read, or if you want to follow me on social media, my email and all the other links to my account are in the description of the video. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't yet to the channel. Once again, thanks for listening.